For most of my life, things were normal. I had a nice upbringing, a good career, and a comfortable life with no real mental health concerns. Then, 18 years ago, after a few tough, challenging experiences, including trying to save a stranger who suffered a fatal heart attack, culminating with a stressful burnout at work, everything changed. I suddenly found myself living and struggling with depression. I felt confused and in a thick fog, like being in deep, stinky mud, uncertain about what was happening in my life and where my suddenly malfunctioning mind was heading. I stopped working and started doubting myself, and that was just the beginning. But it was bearable, and I thought I could work my way through it rationally, as I had easily done with other challenges in my life. Soon after, I started a family, and things seemed better. I greatly enjoyed my extra time spent with my young daughters, and being involved with their schools gave me that sense of purpose and involvement that I'd been sorely missing. But once my marriage fell apart in 2008, my depression became all-consuming in my life. I was never suicidal, but there were times when I no longer wanted to live. In fact, I was no longer living.
My sister would always say to my mom, "Go get Ronnie. He's in jail again." But back then it was just like, what do you say, police station. Being a teenager, I guess, experimenting with life, hanging around the wrong people maybe, But I don't really think anybody's the wrong people. I think everybody has the potential to be whoever they want to be, I am paranoid schizophrenic with major psychosis. And to be honest with you, I think most people today are paranoid. Not because they have schizophrenia or anything like that, but because that's the way the world is today. You try to make friends with people and they're leery of you also. So it's a little rougher today than it was back then. I ended up in a few places, jail here and jail there, and penal for the criminally insane. And after I got out of all that stuff and away from the harder drugs, I did a lot of soul searching with myself. And I said, this is not where I want to be. The homework the group gave me was look in the mirror and tell yourself, I am a good person. I am a smart person. I am a confident person. You couldn't tell yourself, you're no good. It's not true. You are good.
I was 15 and I tried to kill myself, and I ended up in the hospital for 10 days. When I was in the hospital, I thought, okay, I'm gonna, start taking medication. I'm gonna move out of my abusive mother's house, and I'm going to be fine. And then I get out, and I have all those, changes in my life, and I still feel horrible, and I still feel miserable and useless. And I realized that it wasn't just those extraneous factors that were causing me to feel like this. It had really sort of established itself inside me. And that was really difficult to deal with. I thought that it was going to be over the minute I walked out of those doors. I thought that I was going to be better. And so, medication, you can't expect it to make you happy. That's a little overambitious. But I think that what you need it to do is give you the baseline so that you can find things that make you happy. Journaling has been extremely helpful for me in the fact that you can only think about one thing as you're writing it down, or you can at least think about one thing and then the next thing. So it really has a great capacity to slow your mind down and keep you on one track. Pretty bad, in pretty bad shape. And I have like, I don't know, like funny things like in the front. Like I wrote, in case of loss, please return to your bed and let yourself cry there until the pain becomes so all-consuming that the world makes sense again. Your reward, freedom. And then I have like a favorite song usually at the back.
But you don't really want somebody to notice that there's something wrong. You sort of in the back of your head know there's something wrong, but you don't care. I've known in my life about 5 people who committed suicide. And none one of them asked for help. They need to get the help. And if the stigma around mental illness doesn't seem to allow people to do that. A lot of people don't see it. I didn't really see it until it was too late for me to seek help at that time. So as I say, I just gave up and harmed myself. I regret it very much now. So I'm left with scars that I'll have for the rest of my life, both mentally and physically. When you get older, you figure you've learned enough experience that you know all the answers, and that's not always true. But no, it's just I've lived a good life for me. There are times when I wish I'd gotten married and that, but I don't know if I would have been a good parent or companion, full-time companion to somebody. That's something I will never know, not now.
I wasn't making much hope for progress in turning my life around. I wasn't working hard at it. I had been struggling with isolation, maintaining my house and health, raising my girls, trying to get back to work, finalizing my divorce, and managing difficult financial struggles. It was all too overwhelming. The hurdles on my way to recovery seemed too big to overcome. I felt I was still sorely failing at life, despite the great support I was receiving. Then things started to turn around, slowly at first, but then with surprising speed in the last 2 or 3 years. I started feeling better about myself and that I was capable and ready to do more. I found love, not only in a wonderful relationship, but also within myself.
Only we know what would hurt us most. And when the internal dialogue becomes turned against the self, it says just those things that would hurt you the most. And so I was also on a cycle of self-castigation and attack and swearing at myself, and that went on for several decades, yeah. It took about 12 years of therapy, and it was the culmination of this therapy with a Jungian therapist at my local CLSC who had a whole bunch of figurines around her office and a sandbox that you would play with the figurines in and make little designs and stuff like that. And I kept choosing a figurine of a little girl, this very innocent, pure figure. Maybe that's what I needed. And she just told me one day, I guess I was ripe for the change too, but she told me one day, whenever the negative voice comes, listen for what the little girl would say. And it wasn't long, it was maybe 5 minutes getting out of session, just walking across the street, I started attacking myself again, and I just held it, and I took a couple breaths, And I listened for what the little girl would say, and her message came through. And it's like the mind is a symphony. And those positive messages are happening all the time. But let's say they're the strings in the symphony. They're soft. And the horns of attack are blaring out all the time. So you can't even hear them. But then once they pierce through, the symphony gets tuned. And you start to have a more or less normal mixture of positive and negative thoughts depending on what's going on in the day, not just a low that goes on forever. One of the things that we need is people around us who understand how slow recovery is. And we have to understand that too, how slow the nature of recovery is. It takes years. It took years to get into the state. It takes years to get out. The stigma comes from the seeming inactivity in a world that is bustling, in which we value the go-getter, and then we do the opposite for people who seem like they don't fit in or don't seem to want things. But it's not that you don't want things, it's just that you don't think you can have them. Idleness is essential. It's rest, and it's recollecting the self. And it can be where we revitalize ourselves.
I was once asked to describe myself in one word: broken. Because when I looked in the mirror, that was all I saw. Little pieces of who I used to be, as abstract as a constellation, minus the beauty. I was one of those connect the dot pictures nobody quite bothered to finish. I saw a shadow. I was hollow and cold and gray with everything to say but no voice. And even if I could find a voice, I didn't see anybody around to hear it. So I lived with the whispers in my head telling me I wasn't good enough, telling me there was no point in fighting anymore, telling me I wasn't even worth the fight. I was tired of fearing the mirror and the scale and the world. I was tired of hurting myself so I didn't have to hurt other people, so I watched. It was just this crippling. I felt like the world was crashing in on my shoulders and I couldn't handle it anymore. It was months and months of just like sadness for no reason. I was doing everything the world told me I should do to be happy, and I was still miserable. And I remember sitting there thinking, I need to go to the hospital now, or I'm not gonna wake up for my appointment tomorrow. And I opened my laptop and I just wrote a cry for help, and brought that cry for help with me to my appointment the next day, and was diagnosed with clinical depression. Hi guys. So my name's Casey, and like 1 in 5 young women of my generation, I have fought a severe mental health battle. I have clinical depression, clinical anxiety, and in the past, I've fought against self-harm and suicidal thoughts. So on January 29, 2018, I walked into a psychiatrist's office for the first time. Not only that, I also wrote my math midterm in the morning, and I bought a prom dress. So it was like a really productive day. And I thought the psychiatrist appointment was gonna be the most excruciating part of that day. And keep in mind, I limped through grade 10 and 11 math. And turns out not even walking out of that store with a dress that I felt like a goddess in matched the elation my little heart felt when I was handed that prescription paper for the very first time. And no, it wasn't a one-way ticket to happiness, but it was a car that I could finally drive. It was confirmation that this is going to get better. I am beautiful because of what I went through. I survived through who I was to get to who I am, and let me be real with you, some days I didn't know if I was gonna get to meet this girl. She was worth the wait because I am worth the fight. All the nights spent gasping for air, thinking this isn't fair, are long gone in the rearview mirror, finally making me understand why the windshield is so much bigger.
At 18, I was like, how is it possible I'm alive? Why me? All the other children died. Why? How is this possible? And if you saw the picture of the plane, it's gone. Like, it's just ground. as a kid, I didn't know what it was. I don't like planes, the sound of planes. In school, it was a struggle. I was always depressed, but I didn't know why. I'd sleep a lot, go to school. I didn't have friends. I actually tried to kill myself. I went in front of a car, and the car actually hit me. And then I called for help and went to see, that's when I saw psychologists and stuff like that. And back then, they didn't understand what was going on. I reached out to a psychologist saying, look, you know, I'm being sexually abused and stuff like that. And my mom comes in the office and I'm like, can you tell her? And he's like, no, we don't talk about that. Like, you know, you don't, it was from different people, you know, and he didn't protect me. You think that you would get protected. What intensified my drinking was I got pregnant. I lost my child and I thought, like, why me, you know? And I lost, who am I, you know? So basically I was drinking all the times. I was homeless. I ended up sleeping on people's couches. I got married and I'm happily married, but I have a mental illness and it stays with me and I'm depressed. And I kept drinking, and then finally, 2014 is when, like, I continued drinking, and then finally I tried to kill myself again. I would go on this, like, drinking and try to take my pills and call the police each time. The emotions are so intensified that we don't know how to deal with it. It's scary. You get anxiety attacks. Walking in the street and you have an anxiety attack, you're scared you're going to fall. I freeze. I didn't want to live since 6 years old. I always felt I was a burden because of the plane crash. Don't just brush them off. You never know what people are suffering, especially close ones. I want to share that. It's very important. Isolating. That's all we want. We just want someone to say hi. How are you doing? We care. That's it.
Whenever I was sad or depressed, anxious, nervous, any kind of negative emotion, I would resort to eating food, and that was because it made me happy. It was something that it was my safe place almost. On the surface, I wasn't healthy. Obviously, weighing 315 pounds, you don't tend to be a healthy person, and a lot of it was just fear of being this person for the rest of my life, you know? So I wanted to focus more on my mental health and improving myself. Normally, I'd dig into meals. I'd consume probably, I'd say, upwards of 2,000, 3,000 calories a meal, right? This is like crazy, absurd numbers. And what I started doing is I started eating less specific items, so chips or sodas. I'd eat less of that, but I always failed. I always reached a point where I wanted to cheat, and I did. Physical fitness at its core is about failure. It's about pushing your body to failure, and failure is something that you will experience. And I hope you do, because once you experience that feeling of failing a goal or failing what you wanted to do, you know that you can come at it stronger. You know, you have that experience now. You have that experience under your belt, and you're prepared for it. You know, once you're prepared for it, it becomes so much easier. I get like days where I'm just down. You know, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to do anything. But you have to realize that, and I have to tell myself that, you know, those days are fleeting. Those are moments, you know. The moments like that where I just want to quit. I don't want to quit working out. I don't want to quit on myself. I just want to stop feeling bad, you know? And that's temporary. The feeling of those negative feelings that you get, that's temporary. And I stopped looking at what other people thought of me, and I started looking at why I did the things, you know? Going deeper than just, you know, I want to be skinny, you know, I want to be fit. I was going further than that. I was thinking, you know, I wanted to be loved. You know, I wanted to be, you know, cared about. I wanted to feel like I had a purpose, like I had, like someone cared about me, right? And what doing all this has taught me was that there is somebody who cares about me, and that's me, you know?
I just started walking. Then I started running. Then I started skating because I used to play hockey. And I used to just go skating around the rink, you know, and eventually you're feeding that mania.
And it's the arms, push, into. We're going to be burning some calories today. Oh yeah. Stay alive. Every day, 5 days a week, the ladies are in here. So they can go and deal with whatever outside. But this is our medication. This is the drug. Right, Ivory?
I'm good. I know what makes Audley tick, right? And you're not your diagnosis, because now people get diagnosed, they go, oh, you're bipolar or you're depressed, and there's all these labels. But once you connect with your higher you, you're not a label. Be accountable and take responsibility, because it's too easy to say, oh, this happened because I was drunk, or this happened because of my mental health issue. I did not own up to my sickness, and it was really affecting my friends and my family around me. And I literally lost a lot of my loved ones because, you know, it was too much to handle. I'm the boss over my body. I'm in charge. And the benefits are endless. The turning point was when I was in the hospital and my mother came into the hospital and physically lifted me off the bed in Toronto at the Wesley Hospital and told me that I have to get out of the hospital and get back to my life, because I'd given up on myself. I just kind of said, you know what, you know, I'm not in a good place, and I was just gonna let it go like that.
It's all about balance. Yeah.
It's 100% something in the brain that changes them. Like it just turns it around. Shit. They're so happy, and it's so weird. It's so weird how they change like that. They just get so sad, and they're not there. They don't eat properly, and they lost their motivation. They lost their energy. Like it looks like their energy is gone. You know, they don't even sleep. They don't do nothing. They don't watch TV. Nothing. Like they're not there. I was very surprised how much she changed her, because she was so happy, everything was good. There's no pain in the bones. It's something in the brain that just switches. Like it goes negative. It goes like down. They don't care after. It's very weird. They have one thing though, shoot. They care about the suicide after though. They think about that more. I don't know if she took her pills, maybe it would have helped, you know? If she took those pills, you know? Just have to keep an eye on depressed people. But you can't do nothing to keep an eye on it. It's them, they have to do it themselves. Sometimes it does come. Sometimes you think about it when you sleep, but you have to move on, and you know, you can't get, you don't want to get sad all the time. We're humans, we have to be sad, it's normal.
I don't want to go that way, I want to go this way.
Why?
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, we play games together.
Not only one time though.
We play games together. We go to like.
We walk to the dep.
We walk to the dep all the time. We take the bus together.
Yeah, I take the bus together. We sneak out.
No, that foot over here.
Put it where? You feel like there. Here? Over here? She tucked me in and everything. She put me to bed. No, it wasn't her fault. She's just had a disease and then she fell down the water.
But when I'm sad, I just let it go, let it cry, then you feel better, and wipe your face, and you know, it just makes you feel better, you know. It's the soul. The soul makes you do that, you know.
We won 6-2.
Wow, this team must suck.
For a very long, uncomfortably long time, I had felt I would or could never change. I had given up on myself and any hope for a better future. I was ashamed, feeling guilty that I was not enjoying life and not able to properly support and fully interact with my children. It was easier to isolate myself so that I didn't have to face the real world and let those around me, even those close to me who loved and supported me, know how much of an internal struggle I was living and trying to endure. My life has changed drastically since then, and I feel I have recovered. The automatic negative ways of thinking are behind me now, although I am still a work in progress. I still have some difficult days and some work to do to close the chapter of my old life and kick the bad habit of negative thinking. While my mental illness will continue to need managing, I know I now have the tools, resources, and motivation to ensure that my mental health remains a priority, not wanting to give up on life and finding a new way of living.
Yeah, because life can be really amazing given a chance, and you don't want to lose that chance at life. Whether you're young or old, it's really worth living.